Jason Taylor stepped off the plane and into the cold October air of Maple Hill, Vermont. The sky was gray, the wind sharp, and the small town quiet in a way that felt both peaceful and unfamiliar. After years of living in downtown Chicago, the silence here made him feel like he'd stepped into someone else's life. Adam Mitchell, his best friend since college, had invited him for a week-long visit. "Come breathe," Adam had said over the phone. "You work too much. Claire and I would love to have you." Jason had no reason to say no. He hadn't taken a break in over a year. He was single, tired, and if he was honest, a little lonely. Adam's home, a blue-painted farmhouse just outside of town, looked warm and welcoming as he pulled up in a rental car. The porch light was already on. Adam greeted him at the door like nothing had changed since college. Loud, full of energy, and always smiling. But something had changed. Claire, she came to the door a few moments later, towel in hand, hair damp from the shower, wearing a soft green sweater and jeans. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were distant, as if her thoughts were far away. "Hey, Jason," she said warmly. "It's good to see you again." Jason smiled back. "You too." The last time he saw her was 2 years ago at their wedding. She'd worn a pale blue dress and danced barefoot in the grass. He remembered thinking she looked like someone from a painting. At the time, Jason had felt something. Just a flicker. But he buried it fast. She was Adam's wife now. That was the line. Inside the house, everything felt cozy. Candles burned softly in the living room. The fireplace crackled. It smelled like cinnamon and wood. Jason dropped his bag in the guest room and joined them for dinner. They laughed over wine and old stories. Adam still talked too much, told jokes that didn't land, and Claire still laughed at them, though Jason noticed it seemed more like habit than joy. As the night wore on, Adam got a phone call from work. Something urgent. He sighed and kissed Claire on the forehead. "I'll be back in an hour," he said. "You two catch up." Jason watched him leave, the sound of the truck engine fading into the night. Then came the silence. Claire cleared the table quietly. Jason offered to help, and they moved together in the kitchen, not speaking much at first. Then, out of nowhere, Claire said, "You ever feel like you made all the right choices and still ended up in the wrong life?" Jason looked at her, surprised. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I'm still trying to figure out if I've made any right ones at all." She smiled softly, then poured them both a second glass of wine. They sat in the living room, firelight flickering across the walls. Jason noticed the way she tucked her feet under herself, the way her eyes stayed on the flames. "I used to paint," she said after a pause. "Before we moved here, why'd you stop?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Life just got louder, then quieter, but not in the good way." Jason wasn't sure how to respond. There was a kind of sadness in her voice that he didn't remember from before. Not sadness about her marriage, not directly, but something heavier. A quiet ache that came from giving up parts of yourself over time. "Until there's not much left." "I'm glad you came," she said suddenly. "Me too," Jason replied. Though his voice felt tight in his throat, there was a long silence. Then she turned her head and looked directly at him. And for the first time that night, Jason saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Not politeness, not small talk, but awareness. A quiet knowing. As if she saw him in a way no one else had in a long time. He felt the air shift. The room grew still. He didn't speak. Neither did she. But neither of them looked away. Claire finally stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. "I'm going to get some sleep," she said softly. "Thanks for the company." Jason nodded. "Good night." She walked upstairs without another word. He heard the soft creak of the old steps. Then the sound of a door closing gently. Jason sat alone for a while, staring into the fire. Something unspoken had passed between them. Nothing was done. Nothing was said. But it was enough to keep him from sleeping. The next morning, things felt normal again. Claire made breakfast. Adam returned from work, cheerful as ever. They joked, drank coffee, and made plans for a hike. But every now and then, Claire's eyes would flicker toward Jason just for a second, and the quiet tension returned. Jason tried to ignore it, tried to push it down, but it stayed with him. Not because anything inappropriate had happened, it hadn't, but because something inside him had shifted. Something in her, too. She wasn't just Adam's wife anymore. She was someone quietly breaking inside. And Jason wasn't sure if it was empathy, guilt, something more drawing him to her. He told himself it was just the setting. A quiet town. It's a warm house. The memory of an old crush. It would pass. It had to. But later that day, when Adam left for a quick run into town, Jason caught Claire standing by the living room window, staring outside. She turned when she heard him come in. Their eyes met again, and she didn't look away. Not this time. She knew he was watching her, and she didn't care. The days after that first night passed quickly. But Jason felt like time had slowed inside the walls of Adam and Claire's home. He kept telling himself to relax, to enjoy the quiet, the fresh air, the company. Yet beneath the surface, something pulled at him, something he couldn't name. Adam had a demanding job, and during the day he was often out on calls or meetings, leaving Jason and Claire alone more than expected. At first, their conversations were casual about the town, the weather, the best hiking spots nearby. But slowly, those talks deepened. Claire was different now than the last time Jason had seen her. The brightness in her eyes had dimmed just enough to notice. She moved with a kind of tired grace, as if she carried invisible weight on her shoulders. Yet when she spoke, her voice held a quiet strength that made Jason want to listen closer. One afternoon, after a light lunch, Claire invited Jason to join her on the back porch. The sky was overcast and the early fall breeze chilled the air. She handed him a steaming mug of tea and settled into a rocking chair, pulling her sweater tight around her. "Do you ever feel trapped by choices you made years ago?" she asked suddenly, staring into the distance. Jason thought about it. "Yeah, sometimes it feels like you can't undo things, like they build walls around you." Claire nodded. "That's how I feel sometimes, like I'm living someone else's dream." Jason looked at her, sensing how heavy those words were. "Whose dream is it?" She smiled sadly. "Adam's, or maybe the version of Adam I fell in love with." Jason kept quiet, understanding more than he wanted to admit. Marriage wasn't easy, and he could see now how much Claire struggled beneath the surface. Days turned into evenings, and the rhythm of the house settled into a quiet pattern. Claire and Jason would talk, sometimes about nothing important, sometimes about everything. They shared memories from college, hopes they'd abandoned, and small jokes that made the loneliness feel less sharp. One night, after Adam had gone to bed early, Claire sat next to Jason by the fire. The room was warm, but the air between them felt electric. She brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear and looked at him, really looked at him. "Do you ever wish things were different?" she whispered. Jason's heart beat faster. "All the time." She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. It was a sad laugh, the kind that comes when you realize a wish might never come true. "Sometimes I think about running away," she said, "just packing a bag and disappearing." Jason swallowed hard. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere but here," she answered. "But I can't. Not yet." For a moment they sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Jason felt the tension not just in the room but inside himself. He knew what this was. Not attraction, exactly. Not desire. It was something more complicated. Longing mixed with guilt, friendship mixed with pain. Claire looked up at him and smiled again. But this time, it wasn't the polite smile from before. It was softer, realer. It held a promise and a question all at once. Jason realized she was inviting him to understand her, to see her not as Adam's wife, but as a person caught between love and loneliness. He didn't move closer. He didn't say anything, but he felt the distance between them shrink. And the weight of what they both carried pressed down. Over the next few days, Jason noticed small changes. Claire would brush his hand lightly when handing him a cup, or catch his gaze and hold it just a second longer. It wasn't bold or sudden, it was quiet. Almost invisible, but it left a mark. One evening after dinner, Jason went to the back porch for some fresh air. The snow had just started to fall lightly, blanketing the ground in white. Claire joined him without a word, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. They stood side by side watching the flakes drift down. Jason felt a pull to say something. Anything but the words caught in his throat. Then Claire spoke. "You ever feel like no one really sees you?" she asked. Jason nodded. "More than I can count." She sighed, leaning her head on his shoulder for a brief moment. "I'm tired of pretending." Jason's heart ached. He wanted to tell her it was okay to stop pretending, that he saw her. But the moment passed and she stepped back. Claire turned toward the door. But before she went inside, she looked over her shoulder. Her eyes met Jason's. There was no shame, no fear, just quiet acceptance. She saw him watching. She didn't look away. Jason felt his breath catch. The world around them seemed to hold its breath too. He didn't know what to do, what to say. So he just watched back. That night, he lay awake in the guest room, thinking about the woman he had known for years, the woman who was now standing on the edge of something neither of them could name. He wasn't sure if it was love, loneliness, or a complicated mix of both. But one thing was clear. Things could never go back to the way they were. Jason was stuck in the space between friendship and something more, between loyalty and desire, between what was and what might have been, and Claire. She was caught there too. Jason woke early on the last day of his visit. The sun was just starting to rise, casting soft orange light across the maple trees outside the kitchen window. The house was quiet. Adam was still asleep upstairs. Claire had not yet come down. Jason sat alone, drinking his coffee slowly. His thoughts raced, but his body felt heavy. He had come here to relax, but instead he felt tangled in feelings he didn't want to face. The days had passed quickly, yet left behind a weight that pressed on his chest. He glanced around the kitchen, where everything looked the same: the chipped blue mugs, the worn wooden table, the small vase with fresh wildflowers Claire had picked yesterday. It felt like a place frozen in time, but inside it, everything had changed. When Claire appeared in the doorway, her hair was loose and her eyes tired but calm. She wore a soft gray robe and her bare feet made no sound on the wooden floor. For a moment, she just stood there watching Jason. "I made you something," she said quietly, holding a small envelope in her hand. Jason blinked, surprised. She walked over and handed it to him. He looked inside and found a folded piece of paper, a painting. It was simple but beautiful, done in soft colors. It showed the house with the blue porch light glowing in the snow, just like the night he first arrived. And in the foreground, two dark figures stood side by side, close, but not touching. Jason felt a lump form in his throat. The painting wasn't just a picture. It was a story, a memory, a secret kept between two people who knew things they could never say out loud. Claire smiled faintly. "I started painting again. I wanted to capture that night the way it felt to be here, with you." Jason looked up at her, searching her face. "Why did you stop before?" She shrugged, almost embarrassed. "Life got complicated. I stopped making time for myself, but being here with you around, it reminded me there's still a part of me that wants to create." Jason folded the painting carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. "Thank you. It means a lot." They both stood quietly for a moment. Then the sound of a car rolling up the driveway broke the silence. Adam was home. Claire's smile faded instantly. She stepped back, the warmth in her eyes replaced by something harder, a shield. "I should go get ready," she said softly, turning toward the stairs. Jason watched her leave, feeling the room grow colder. He heard the soft creak of the old wooden steps as she disappeared upstairs. His heart pounded in his chest. This was the moment he had been avoiding, the moment he had to say goodbye. Adam appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, still in his running clothes, glowing from exercise and fresh air. He didn't notice anything unusual. "Morning, Jason," he said, flashing a big smile. "Ready for breakfast?" Jason nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, sounds good." They sat at the table and ate in easy silence. Adam talked about work, his voice full of excitement over a new project. Jason listened but found it hard to focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to Claire, to the quiet moments they had shared, and the distance that had grown between her and Adam. When breakfast ended, Jason grabbed his jacket and packed his bag. It was time to leave. He stood in the hallway, hesitating. He didn't want to leave. Not yet. Adam clapped him on the shoulder. "Thanks for coming, man. It was good to have you here." "Yeah, me too." As Jason walked toward the door, he glanced up at the window on the second floor. The curtain was pulled aside just slightly. A pair of eyes watched him. Claire's eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But Jason felt her looking a quiet goodbye without words. Outside, the air was crisp and fresh. Jason took a deep breath and turned toward his car. He drove away slowly, the blue porch light fading behind him. For days afterward, Jason thought about that visit, about the things left unsaid, about the painting tucked safely in his jacket. It wasn't a story of betrayal or loud drama. It was something quieter, more complicated. He realized some connections aren't about action, but about feeling, about what could have been if only things were different, about the pain of watching someone you care about slip away into a life that isn't really theirs. Claire had chosen her path. Adam had chosen his, and Jason had chosen to leave. But the memory of those silent moments, the warmth, the sadness, the unspoken understanding, stayed with him. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes aren't loud or angry. They're quiet, gentle, and they leave behind a soft ache that never truly disappears. Jason didn't know what the future held for Adam and Claire. Maybe their marriage would heal, maybe it wouldn't. But he knew this no matter where life took him. He would always remember the woman behind the blue porch light. The woman who didn't care he was watching, because she was lost too. And in that loss, they had found something neither of them could name. Something real. Lauren had always been the responsible one. In her friendships, at work, in her family, she was the one people leaned on. Calm, thoughtful, someone who could carry things without making a sound. Her husband, Ethan, often said she was the quiet strength in their marriage. They had been married for 10 years. Life wasn't perfect, but it was steady, comfortable. But lately, something had shifted. It wasn't a fight or a mistake. Nothing dramatic, just a feeling, subtle but persistent, like a draft in a closed room. Lauren noticed the quiet between her and Ethan had grown longer. He still kissed her on the cheek every morning, still texted her during the day. But they hadn't talked about anything real in weeks. Maybe months. The routine had become louder than the connection. Then Grace came back. Grace was Lauren's younger sister, 5 years younger, more emotional, more impulsive. She'd been living in Los Angeles with a boyfriend for years, until one day, without warning, he ended it. No real explanation. No closure. Grace came home to Portland with a suitcase and red eyes, asking for a place to stay while she figured things out. Lauren didn't hesitate. She opened the guest room, made the bed with fresh sheets, and told Grace she could stay as long as she needed. Ethan was gentle when he saw Grace. He always had a soft spot for her, like the older brother she never had. He gave her space, but also made sure she ate, asked if she needed anything, and didn't tiptoe around her sadness. That first week, Grace barely left the house. She stayed wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching old shows, barely eating. One night, Lauren walked into the living room and saw Ethan sitting beside Grace. He was just talking. Nothing strange. But Grace was laughing. Actually laughing. It was the first time since she'd arrived. Lauren stood there for a moment, unnoticed, and felt two things at once. Relief that Grace had smiled again, something else. Something she didn't want to name. In the following days, Grace began to come back to life. Not fully, but slowly. She helped with dishes, joined Lauren on walks, asked Ethan about his work. Lauren watched them grow comfortable together. She knew Ethan was just being kind. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't crossing any line. But Grace looked at him differently now. Like she saw something in him Lauren hadn't seen in a long time. And maybe that's what scared her. One evening, as Lauren folded laundry, she looked up and said something she hadn't planned to. "She leans on you," said Dot. Ethan paused. "Grace." Lauren nodded. "She needs someone," he said carefully. "I know," Lauren replied. "And you've been good to her." Ethan sat down beside her. "Are you okay with it?" Lauren hesitated. "I think I am. But I keep wondering if I should feel something else. Jealousy, maybe. Or a protectiveness." "You're allowed to feel both," he said. "But it's not like that." "I know," she said again. "But I think maybe she needs to feel closeness. Something real. Even if it's small." Ethan looked confused. "What are you saying?" Lauren met his eyes. "I'm saying I trust you. I know your heart. And I trust her too. I don't know. I think she needs to be seen. And you're the only one she'll let see her right now." The words felt strange in her mouth. Not because they weren't true, because she'd never imagined saying them out loud. Ethan was quiet. He didn't agree or disagree. He just sat with the thought. Lauren didn't explain it further. She didn't want to turn it into something messy. She only knew that this moment, as strange as it was, mattered. A few days later, Lauren came home early from work. She walked into the house and heard soft voices on the back porch. She didn't make a sound, just stepped lightly down the hallway, through the screen door. She saw Ethan and Grace sitting on the porch swing. Grace had her knees pulled up to her chest, a blanket over her legs. Ethan sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could lean into him if she wanted to. They weren't laughing this time. Grace was crying. "I just don't know what I did wrong," she whispered. "I gave him everything." "You didn't do anything wrong," Ethan said gently. "Sometimes people leave because of their own fears, not because of our failures." Grace wiped her eyes, and for a moment she rested her head against Ethan's shoulder. He didn't pull away. Lauren didn't move. She watched from the hallway, her chest tight. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like watching something sacred, like watching pain soften in the presence of kindness. She wasn't angry. She wasn't shocked. She just stood there, feeling everything all at once. Later that night, Lauren sat next to Ethan in bed. She didn't ask about the porch. He didn't bring it up either. Instead, they talked about work and bills and the weather. But something in the silence between their sentences had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. The next morning, Grace made coffee for everyone. She looked tired but peaceful. "I'm thinking about visiting Mom next week," she said. "Just for a few days." Lauren smiled. "She'd love that." Ethan nodded. "You should go. Get a change of scenery." Grace looked at both of them as if searching their faces for something unspoken. But no one said anything more. The moment passed. Over the next few days, things settled into a new rhythm. Grace smiled more. Lauren felt less on edge. Ethan stayed steady. The three of them moved carefully around each other, but it wasn't out of fear. It was respect. Understanding. One night, as Ethan was closing up the house, Lauren said, "Thank you." "For what?" he asked. "For being who you are. And for not turning this into something ugly." Ethan stepped closer. "Are we okay?" Lauren nodded. "I think we're learning something new about love." He wrapped his arms around her. They stood there, quiet, still connected. Lauren didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what would happen next. But she knew this. Love wasn't always a straight line. Sometimes it curved. Sometimes it paused. And sometimes it meant letting go of control, not out of weakness, but out of trust. She had trusted Ethan, and she had trusted Grace. And in doing so, she had stayed true to herself. She had watched something unfold that might have broken other people, but for her, it opened something deeper, something more honest. She wasn't afraid anymore. After Grace's visit to their mother's house, the house felt quieter in a way Lauren hadn't expected. Grace was away for a few days, and while Lauren thought she might feel relief, she found herself missing the energy Grace had brought Evan, if it made her uneasy at times. The space felt different, as if holding its breath. Ethan and Lauren moved back into their routine. But Lauren could see the change in Ethan's eyes. It wasn't just the stress of work or the usual fatigue. There was something else, something softer, more reflective. When he spoke, he seemed more thoughtful and at times more distant. One evening after dinner, Ethan sat beside Lauren on the couch, his fingers nervously playing with the edge of his shirt. She waited for him to say something important, but wasn't sure what. "I've been thinking about Grace," he finally said. Voice low. Lauren nodded, bracing herself. "She's still fragile," Ethan continued. "She needs support. More than I thought." Lauren looked down at her hands. "I know." Ethan sighed. "And I think I'm starting to see things differently about us, about what we need." Lauren's heart skipped. Was he talking about their marriage? Or Grace? "I don't mean this in a bad way," Ethan said quickly, noticing her expression. "It's just, Grace and we connect in a way that's different from before. She's opened up to me, and I feel like I'm seeing parts of her I never knew." Lauren felt a mix of emotions swirl inside her. Pride for her sister's healing. Jealousy, but quiet. And something deeper, curiosity. "I want to be honest with you," Ethan said. "I don't want to hide how close we've become." Lauren reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for telling me." Ethan looked into her eyes. "Do you think we're okay? That we can navigate this?" Lauren wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe their bond was strong enough. "I hope so." That night, Lauren lay awake, thinking about all the times she had felt lonely herself, even with Ethan beside her. How sometimes the silence between them spoke louder than words. And now, with Grace, something new was unfolding. It was complicated. It was fragile. But it was real. The days that followed were filled with small moments that built up in Lauren's mind. Grace calling Ethan just to share a joke. Ethan leaving work early to help Grace with her car. Lauren watching them share glances she didn't fully understand. Lauren reminded herself to trust in Ethan, trust in Grace, and trust in herself. One afternoon, Lauren went out for a walk to clear her mind. The cool air filled her lungs, but her thoughts kept drifting back to home. She wondered if what was happening could change everything or if it was simply a passage, a storm to weather. When she returned, she found Ethan and Grace in the living room. Sitting close on the couch, their conversation quiet but intense. Grace looked more relaxed than Lauren had seen in weeks. Ethan smiled softly at her. Lauren smiled too, but inside, a question lingered: how far would this closeness go? Later, Ethan and Lauren talked again. This time more openly. "I don't want to lose what we have," Ethan said, his voice steady but serious. "But I also don't want to hold Grace back from healing." Lauren sighed, feeling the weight of their situation. "Maybe healing means change." Maybe," Ethan said. "And maybe love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go." Lauren thought about those words deeply. They felt true and strange all at once. One evening, Lauren found herself alone with Grace in the kitchen. Grace was making coffee, and for the first time, they talked without the shadow of sadness. "I'm scared," Grace admitted softly. "Scared I'll never be the same." Lauren reached out and touched her arm. "You will be. You're stronger than you think." Grace looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Thank you, Lauren, for everything." Lauren smiled. "We're family. We stick together." That night, Lauren lay awake again, this time with a calmness she hadn't felt in a while. She realized she wasn't just watching what was happening. She was part of it. She was learning that love could be messy and beautiful at the same time. The next day, Ethan came home early. He found Lauren on the porch, staring at the sunset. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "We're walking a new path," he said softly. Lauren nodded, squeezing his hand. "Together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lauren felt a quiet hope blooming inside her. Maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about courage. The courage to face the unknown. To trust, to forgive, and to open her heart even when it was hard. She didn't know what the future held. But for now, she was ready to keep walking hand in hand with Ethan and Grace. Wherever the road might lead, The days following Ethan's confession were a whirlwind of emotions for Lauren. She wanted to believe that everything between her, Ethan, and Grace could remain untouched by jealousy or pain. But deep inside, she felt the fragile thread of their delicate balance starting to pull. Ethan's attention toward Grace was no longer subtle. He checked in with her more often, sometimes sending quick texts during the day or calling just to hear her voice. Lauren noticed the way Grace's face brightened when Ethan was near, and it made her heart ache not from anger, but from the unfamiliar feeling of displacement. One evening, Lauren returned home earlier than usual. The house was unusually quiet. When she entered the living room, she found Ethan and Grace sitting close on the couch. Their conversation light, but filled with unspoken meaning. Grace rested her head briefly on Ethan's shoulder. For a moment, Lauren felt like an intruder in her own home. She stood by the doorway, not sure if she should announce her arrival or retreat silently. Ethan caught her eye and smiled, but Lauren couldn't shake the hollow feeling in her chest. That night, sleep escaped her. She tossed and turned, caught in the web of her own thoughts. The next day, Lauren confronted her feelings honestly. Sitting across from Ethan at breakfast, she said, "I'm struggling with this. I want to support Grace, but sometimes it feels like I'm losing you." Ethan reached for her hand. "You're not losing me. I love you, Lauren. That won't change." Lauren wanted to believe him, but reality had its own way of complicating things. Grace had been making progress. Her laughter was more frequent, her smiles less forced. She even began volunteering at a local community center, something Lauren admired. Yet the closeness between Grace and Ethan deepened with every passing day. One afternoon, Lauren was alone with Grace in the kitchen, watching her sister carefully chop vegetables for dinner. Grace looked up, her eyes soft but serious. "Lauren, can I ask you something?" She said. "Of course," Lauren replied. "Do you think Ethan and I are too close?" Lauren hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't know," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like you're the one holding him together," Grace sighed. "I never meant for things to get complicated." Lauren smiled sadly. "None of us did." The tension in the house grew like a quiet storm. Lauren found herself watching Ethan and Grace more than before, not out of suspicion, but out of a desperate need to understand. One evening, she overheard their voices while passing by the living room. Ethan was comforting Grace after she received disappointing news about a job application. "I'm here," Ethan said softly. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." Grace's voice broke. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Lauren felt tears sting her eyes. She wanted to cry and scream at the same time. Later, Ethan came to bed and found Lauren awake, staring at the ceiling. She reached out and pulled him close. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't want to lose what we have." Ethan kissed her forehead. "You won't. We're stronger than this." Despite his words, Lauren knew their marriage was being tested. The definition of love was shifting under their feet. One day, Lauren invited Grace for a walk in the park. The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet, and the air was crisp with the coming cold. "Grace," Lauren began, "I need to be honest with you. I'm afraid." Grace looked surprised. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that this closeness between you and Ethan could break us." Grace sighed, looking down at the fallen leaves. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." "I know," Lauren said gently, "but we need to figure out where to draw the line." Grace nodded, tears brimming. "I want us to be a family again." Lauren reached out and held her sister's hand. "Me too." Back at home, things shifted again. Ethan seemed to sense the tension and tried to create space, pulling back slightly from Grace, focusing more on Lauren. But Lauren saw the flicker of sadness in Grace's eyes, and it pained her. One night, Lauren and Ethan sat quietly after dinner, sipping tea. The weight of unsaid words filled the room. "Do you still want to fight for us?" Lauren asked. Ethan met her gaze, steady and sure. "Every day." Lauren felt hope rise. Maybe love wasn't about perfection, it was about commitment days later. Grace announced she had found a job in a nearby town and would be moving out soon. Lauren felt a bittersweet relief. The night before Grace left, the three of them sat together in the living room. It was quiet, but the silence spoke volumes. Grace looked at Lauren. "Thank you for everything." Lauren smiled warmly. "You're my sister." "I love you," Ethan added, "and we're always here for you." As Grace packed her bags the next morning, Lauren watched her leave with a mix of emotions, hope, sadness, and a new understanding of love's complexities. That night, Lauren and Ethan held each other close. They knew their journey wasn't over, but they were ready to face it together. Love had changed, yes, but it had not ended.